And here we are back for video 7 in a series of videos about watercolor tell-all. Okay, so we were looking at these brushes and we're going awfully slow. I just heard a sound. Did y'all hear it? It was my watch talking to me. Apparently Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Okay, so I want to start up here with basic watercolor. And it is similar in some ways to the grainy brush, except that it is a watercolor replace, a real watercolor replace. All right, so heavy pressure gives me a dark color. But as I lighten the pressure, it's like it picks it up. See, I can go right back to white. So in a case like that, I would probably come up here and just fill this with dark. And then I would start trying to lighten it up. Okay, what do you think that's going to look like? We'll see. Ta-da! See, it almost went white. It's such a light color to begin with. So if I want to work with this one, it's really, I think of it more as kind of a blending sort of brush. Not blending, it's, I don't know what I want to call it. It's not blending. It's like a brush that will take things back to white. Ta-da! Now you can see that in this case, it was going up and getting darker and working pretty well. And I could probably come back over this like this and might be able to get rid of this line that I have. I don't know. We'll just see what this looks like. Nope, didn't really get rid of it. Okay, so let's look what the Yoker looks like. This is without pause diffusion. Ta-da, and you get a light kind of look. It's a fairly nice blend. So what happens if we use the pause diffusion? So let's just put this in big, heavy, and then we'll start lighter. Oh, all right, now we'll go to the yellow. Now watch this. It's going to pick up all of that blue and just replace it with the yellow. It's like the ultimate pickup brush, but it doesn't pick up the color, it goes to white. And then when you release the pressure, it does bleed together, but the yellow took up all of the blue, so you're really just going to have the yellow showing. So in this case, pause diffusion might work if you want to do two colors beside each other and you really don't want them to mix too much. Then you could use this brush. I just had a big sip of coffee. All right, so now we will go to Bloom Dab. Now, in the Bloom Dab, this is going to be totally different because this is a watercolor brush as opposed to a real watercolor. And so it's going to bleed out or have a different kind of look to it than the others. Now, it's called bloom dab for a reason. If I come to select and I invert the selection, that means I can paint out here now. And now I want to change to a different paper. And I'm going to change to, not marbling, I'm going to go to my marbling paper and go to this A Ukasaya left or whatever it is. And let me see how it's set up. Yeah, the scale is down. Everything else is fine. Just want to bring the scale down. Okay, so what happens here is bloom dab. All right, so if I just put the brush directly on the canvas, it spreads out from the brush and creates a shape. Okay, now if I move that around a little bit, then the shape, expands to whatever it should expand to going around. But if you'll notice, this has a specific floral look. So if I was making some flowers real quickly in Painter, I might do it with this brush and just change my paper to something that would pick up these interesting shapes, and I could change the color inside or whatever. Again, it also depends on where you apply the brush, because every place you apply it, it's going to look different. And each one will have the feeling of flowers. See? And if I change, let's go to red, then I could start putting some red in. Or maybe I want the red to be on the outside. Working in. See, it's really pretty cool. I might make this one into somewhat of a bud, kind of like that. Anyway, bloom dab is one of those kind of brushes that spreads out. You could use it for other things, but mainly I made it to create little quick forms that may be interesting. And I'm going to go to select, invert selection, and now the flower is back. And we're going to go to thick and thin 12. Now this is one of our linear brushes, and it just, let's get, go back to the blue. All right, so when you paint with it, it's thin, gives you a thin line, light pressure, a thin line, heavy pressure begins to get bigger. And if you stop and hold the pen down, it should, well, I thought it had continuous flow, but it doesn't. Certainly thought it was. Anyway, it will, diffuse, and the lines will get lighter and darker depending on how they look. Now, or depending on your pressure. Now, that was thick and thin 12. And then if you go to thick and thin 17, this brush is controlled by speed. So slow would give you this kind of funky line, but quickly, see, it's as if you're doing some sort of pressure. Now it is pretty large at 8.6, so I might bring it down to about 5 or 4. And see, if I go long, I get a thinner kind of line. I think this particular line is very expressive, and I like it. Now, if we come down here, we have another one called O-liner. And we can take it. Okay. What's that? Oh, I know. I need to go back to our other paper. This one shows a lot of texture. So I'm going to go back to something that has a smoother texture. Now, because it's so tight, it still has a pretty rough texture with this brush. But the brush is, it's an old liner. I like it. It's wet. And so I decided to keep those three in. The difference between them is these are easy to re-wet, where your Thick and Thin 17 is very difficult to re-wet. It is dry when you put it on. Okay, now I want to take, we'll take the basic watercolor, and I'm going to put the blue over it fairly strong. Okay, now I'm going to go to Thick and Thin 11. And Thick and Thin 11 takes the paint up. So it's like working with some sharp object and you're scratching back into the paint with watercolor. So in the heavier the pressure, the thicker the line. Now, Thick and Thin 4, another linear brush, does this. It starts off kind of with a ball and then ends. Now, I'm going kind of slow and then going up real fast. If I do the opposite, start fast and end slow, you see I can get forms that look like it's leaves of some sort or wildflowers with a cone of flowers on top of the stem. Anyway, it's just another way of getting these kind of looks, linear looks. Now that was just a brush stroke that made a difference, but you can use it, you know, as is. It fast, you're going to get thinner, but if you slow down when you're doing it, you see you might get dots. Again, it gives you a very effective line, I think. All right, so we've covered the linear stuff, so we'll come back in the next video and look at some more. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.